Welcome back to the How to Write a Book podcast. I'm your host, Massiel Valenzuela. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we have the pleasure of really diving into a wonderful fiction author, Tiara J. Brown. Tiara J. Brown grew up in a small town in Northeast Ohio, attended Ohio University, and she's been working and writing stories ever since she was 12 years old. The Tales of Alexandria Steckler, The Locket, is her first published novel. We're going to be diving in. I thought she was such an inspiration, not only for her work, but how she approaches her self-publishing. It's a really great topic, the way that she discusses how the process went, and also a couple of bumps that happened along the way and how she overcame that. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much. All right, we'll see you inside.
Welcome to the How to Write a Book podcast, the show that helps you plan, write, and publish your book, even if you're a beginner or just feel like one. Now, for your host, she's written over a dozen books and helps others bring their books to life. Here she is, Massiel.
Thank you for listening to the How to Write a Book podcast. Now, I want to give a special announcement. So, November is your month of transformation. Get a 1-hour coaching session with me by choosing any of the 3 options, or all 3. Option 1, join our Patreon for $1. Option 2, book a $1 coaching session on coach.me. Option 3, leave an Apple Podcast review. Send a screenshot to my email and get a coaching spot. Now, you can totally do all 3 and you'll get 3 hours of coaching. You can find all of the links to the Patreon, the coach.me, and my email in the show notes. Act fast. This offer is only valid in November to celebrate National Novel Writing Month. All right, writers, go ahead, get to it, and we'll see you soon. Okay, hi, and welcome back to the How to Write a Book podcast. Oh my gosh, happy to have you, Tiara J. Brown. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's kind of early here on the Pacific coast. Where are you at right now?
Oh my gosh. So I'm Eastern time, so I live in Ohio. So I think I'm like three hours ahead of you guys.
Yes. Okay, awesome. Cool. So I didn't catch you at a super early part of the day then.
No.
Good. I've done that before. People are really the sleepiness out of their eyes. So welcome to the show. We're super happy to have you. Tiara J. Brown is the author of The Locket, The Tales of Alexandria Steckler. This is your debut novel.
Yes.
Well, congratulations. We're excited to have your book. And tell everyone about you, tell about your work. Introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi. Okay, cool. So hi, everyone. My name is Tiara J. Brown, and like Massiel said, I am the author of the young adult fantasy novel, The Tales of Alexandria Stecklar, The Locket. The Locket is about a 15-year-old girl named Alexandria Steckler, Alex for short. And she's telekinetic, and she lives physically underground with her family during an on-again, off-again war between her kind, so other psychics, and magical sorcerers. And then one day, she gets separated from her family above ground in the land of the sorcerers, and she has to make it back home, lest be captured, killed, something worse, So that's the main conflict of the story, and it's just the ticking clock is, will she make it back home safely, or will someone else get to her first? And you gotta read the book to find out.
Oh my gosh. I love that premise. I love that. That's so oh yeah, okay. I'm a super fantasy buff, so I'm oh yes. Oh, this is your debut.
Oh, no, I think you heard.
Oh, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, you're back now. Sorry,
okay.
For a second. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know. I'd just be I would keep ranting. Okay, I love this. So how are you feeling? This is your debut book. What's going on in your mind right now?
Oh goodness. So I don't know if this is something you get with every book or just your first book, since it is my first one, but it's definitely a mixture of things. So writing it took longer than than expected. There's a whole story about like how long it took me to write this. Like, but I was kind of, because I'm self-published, I was kind of relieved when it was finally out, because it was a lot of work. Like, I love writing. I'm passionate about writing. But when you're self-published, it is a lot. I was like a little bit like, oh, thank God this is finally over. You know, a little bit was that. And then, but I was also like really, really happy. And I think I was in a little bit of disbelief, like, because I'd always wanted to be a writer ever since I was a kid. And then I was like, oh, snap, I can actually call myself a published writer now. So that was also surreal. So it was a mixture of that. And then it was also a mixture of emotions, getting feedback from people. Like, you know, not everyone's going to like every book, and I've gotten mixed feedback. Like, some people really like it, some people not so much, and then some people somewhere in the middle, which is fine. Like, every book I've ever read, I wasn't like crazy about and stuff like that. But it's definitely interesting because it does give me some self-reflection to be like, would I have written this a little bit differently? Would I keep it the same and stuff like that? So it's been a mixed bag, but overall, like, it's been a great experience. Like, it's pretty thrilling to be like, oh my gosh, I wrote a book, and this is the first book in a trilogy. So I'm currently working on the second one. So the way that when this book ends, the story is not over yet.
Oh my gosh. Is it like,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say, is it like a cliffhanger, or is it just like for sure that the next level is coming?
How the first book ends?
Yeah. You don't have to say too much. No spoilers, but yeah.
Well, I planned it to be a trilogy, so not all the answers get answered in the first book, so that way you have things to let go off on in book 2. And also, there is I guess a bit of a spoiler, but I think it's fun to say, there's a big question that happens at the end of book 1. So some things get answered in book 1, obviously, but then it arises like another big question. It was like, well, if that's true, then what's this over here? Which helps go into book 2, and I love foreshadowing and stuff like that. There are clues to what that new question is in book 1, but like, I'm not going to say what those clues are or what the question is, but it's kind of fun. Like, writing that part, planning that was a lot of fun, because when I was in the beta reading phase of the manuscript, I kind of wondered, I was like, oh, I wonder if this is, I made it too obvious and like nobody picked up on it. So I was like, oh, this is going to be fun for when the trilogy is over, if they could like go back and see like the clues that maybe didn't seem important at the time.
I love that. Oh, I love when that happens. You're like, oh my gosh, it was in front of me the whole time. That's brilliant. And that's the right way to do a series. You know, like, you have to answer some questions, but then put an even bigger question. You know, why do you want to pick up book 2? You know, because of this big reason, you know? Yeah. So that's brilliant.
Thank you.
Definitely. I'm excited to read it. So you mentioned something a little bit earlier. You said that the process took way longer than you thought. Yeah. But that's a whole journey. Can you tell us like what was going on?
Oh goodness. So it was years, many years in the making. This was like, it's a whole story in its own. So I actually thought of the premise or the idea for the book when I was a kid. True story. Like, it's I thought, because I've always loved fantasy books. Like, I think the first fantasy book I ever read and really liked was what was it called? Jeremy Thatcher, the Dragon Hatcher. It was about I think he was 10 and he hatched a dragon egg in like modern day, and like then he has like this dragon he's hiding in his room. It's a hilarious book. But
you can read that one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I read it in elementary school and it got me like hooked on the fantasy genre ever since. But I think I was around 13 or 14 years old when I actually originally thought of the idea for this story. And I even tried to like write it back then. It was not good. I was going through a Shakespearean phase and had no idea what I was doing. So like the writing was so inconsistent and it was not good. But it was okay because the idea was there. And then cut to years later, like after high school, after college, I pick it back up again. And I was just like, oh, like, because I kept the story. And I was like, oh man, this is written pretty bad. But the idea is there. So I decided to rewrite it as an adult. And it took a very long time because, so when I wrote when I was about 13, 14 years old, it was essentially this whole trilogy, but condensed into like one story. And then being an adult and having read more books and being better at writing and having more experience with it, like you have to expand the story. You have to expand the character development. You can't make things just like happen.
Yeah.
So what I thought was one book, as I'm like writing it and really taking the time to have characterization, expanding it and build up the things, it was actually really 3 books in one that I thought it was one because there are 3 separate climaxes. And so, and the type of writer I am, I don't write chronologically. Like I outline things because you want to know where you're going, but I will write a scene here, write a scene there, write something in the middle, but with an outline. That way you know where you're going at least. And so it took probably like, the whole thing probably took like 7 years because
nice.
Yeah, because I was writing like 3 books essentially at the same time. And then when I realized that like this was 3 and I like broke it up into 3 books, like in the falling action after each climax, I was actually able to concentrate on book 1 and finally finish it. But because of that, I did get a really good head start on book 2, to be fair, because like it was already partially written. And book 3 is technically partially, it's written even less. But each book was at least partially written. So, but that's why it took so long. I was trying to write all 3 books at the same time, not realizing it was all 3 books. I thought it was one, but it would have been a giant, massive story. If it was all one, it would have taken so long to finish.
Was that like a light bulb moment? You know, you're writing the story and you're like, wait a second, it's 3 books. Like, what was like that? Like, boom, yeah, totally. This is going to be way more.
It was definitely like I started realizing it little by little. So as I was writing it more, I was just like, oh, maybe this book seems like it's in parts. So I kept it one book still, and I stuck for like part 1, part 2, part 3. And as I kept writing it, I was just like, oh, like this seems like each part has a mini climax. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who was also a writer, and I was telling him about it, and he was just like, are you sure those aren't like just 3 separate stories? Like, what are you doing? Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh snap, I think he's right. But then I was happy to separate because it made it less daunting. Like I could like actually finish a book because it was like I can concentrate on that one section or at least that one book. So it definitely made it easier to finish. But yeah, it was a little bit of a gradual thing until someone like pointed it out, and I was like, oh dang, I think he's right.
That's so funny because you're like part 1, part 2, part 3. You're like, isn't it book 1, book 2?
Yeah. He was just like looking at me like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. So really, you've spent, those 7 years working on the 3 books, just like you said. I mean, it was, even though they're not entirely done yet, but that was the framework, the groundwork for your trilogy. Yeah.
So that made, it was probably actually like 6 years. Like the 7th year was also like me self-publishing this.
Oh, cool.
Like, yeah, but it was still like it felt like a long time. But yeah, no, it made that easier because at least I know like where I'm going with the trilogy. Like I know how it ends. Like I know how the whole thing ends. So that's kind of comforting in that, especially with the writing process.
Oh, that's lovely. No, that's really cool because like you really have like that foundation,
Yeah.
And I'm curious, can you tell us more about your outlining process? Because you kind of you do an outline, but you're more of like a a writer who jumps in and out of time. So what's your outline like?
My outline's a little crazy. So
I love that.
It's a Word doc, and it's a couple of pages long. And basically in the outline, I list, like the big events that I want to happen, and I track the like emotional growth of the characters just to make sure it makes sense. So like the beginning, whatever happens, and then maybe like a fork way here, like, hey, this we have to hit this mark, and then halfway here, this has to happen, just to make sure like it flows well. And then when at least for book one, since I finished that one, I did that, and then I would read it multiple times. I feel like that's the other thing people don't think about when you write something. The amount of times you reread the same text is like pretty crazy. Yeah. But I would constantly reread it just to make sure it flowed well, to make sure like the characters emotionally made sense, especially since the type of writer I am, like write a scene here, write a scene here, write a scene there. Like I have the outline to be like, okay, this is what they feel in this moment. But I also like read it specifically just for that. I mean, I'll read it a million times for specifically like one thing, and then read again, like looking at something else, but just to make sure it just emotionally just makes sense. So my outline is mainly that. It's mainly like big events and notes of being like, hey, I want this person to have this revelation at this point, or this plot twist should happen here. And then, and then the events and stuff like that.
That's awesome. So do you feel like you're a writer who focuses, and it sounds like it, you focus more on the emotional arcs than like, plot, or like plotting isn't like, like boom, bam, this and that. It's more about where the characters are going or where they're ending up for you.
Yeah, I would say that. I'm more of a character writer. I mean, plot is important. Like things have to be happening, and, but I definitely am someone called me a mood writer one time, which is a new term I've learned. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely that.
Mood writer. I like that.
where I do focus a lot on like the emotions of the characters and how they react to different things, and I guess a little bit of a spoiler, but I'll be super vague, so it doesn't give away anything. And in book 3, like the main character also has to make a choice, because I mean, it's a fantasy adventure book. I don't think it's a spoiler to say the main character is going to go through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And in book 3, like she like has to make a choice in how she reacts to it, and then she sees people like that move forward, right? And then people that just like keep that pain and trauma in them, and it's just like, well, like, what are you gonna do? So I love focusing on like the emotion of characters, because like I do feel like as people, like that's how we connect with each other, and I think that's how we connect with characters too. Like when we see them go through things and just how they emotionally react.
Yeah. And I like 100% agree with you. Like when I'm doing my writing, I feel like I'm very character focused. It's their arc, where are they from the beginning, where are they to the end? And it might also be genre specific, like if you're going for like action thrillers, it's going to be more like, where's the explosions and stuff, Yeah. But I think that's why I love fantasy, because I feel like for the fantasy it really is, even though it's, we could have magic and warlocks and all this other stuff. It really is a reflection of like the real life, it's where's the truth in our life now, but just covered with magic, Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so much fun, is like you can relate to the characters, but then there's like magic and like battles and stuff going on. Like it's so much fun. I think fantasy is also one of those genres that I think it's fun to imagine yourself like, what would I do in that situation? And, it's high risk. It can be a very high risk, like a thriller, but a lot of fantasy, like we don't take the humanity out of it. We like emotionally see like what is happening to these people.
Like this poor person. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I love that. So I'm like I feel like the same vein as you are here. It's like, I love that part. I love that about fantasy, You can experience pain, but you experience it like the safety of like the witch's cauldron or like the dragon's den, So speaking of pain, I wanted to know more about, you said you had like a beta phase. I love this because I think that a lot of people overlook the beta phase. So can you tell us, what is your beta phase for your writing projects?
Oh, yeah. So the beta phase is, I heard this like upon a lot of like YouTubers actually saying this too. So I was like, oh, well, I'll do it too. When I was writing is like, so I did this after I felt like I finished my manuscript to the best of my ability, but it was before I hired editors to like, to come in, and I just gave, my book out to people I trusted and was just like, here you go. I'm not going to say anything. Let me know what you think. Okay, bye. So it was, yeah. And then I even said, like, if you guys have any questions about something or if something's unclear, like, let me know or feel free to ask me. Cause that also tells me like, hey, if I like need to like make something more clear. Cause when you write something, it all makes sense to you.
Yeah.
It makes sense to you, but it's an entirely different thing to make sense, to make sure like it makes sense to the reader. And I'm an underwriter. I learned that about myself, where I don't always provide as much detail as I should. And then so beta testing or beta reading is great for me because if someone's like, hey, can you like explain more? I'm like, oh, okay. And then, then I do, and it's fine. But it's that way of getting feedback before you get editors involved. And the feedback for me was great. There are certain things that some people told me like, hey, this is kind of confusing or whatever. And I went back and then I fixed it before, I sent it to the developmental editor and like the copy editor and all the things. So I think it's great. There are some people that, and I think this is to be expected, to not read the whole thing. And then, cause not everyone's going to. So if you know your beta reader and you only want to send them like a section, that's fine too. But it's just great. It's just and beta readers aren't, they're not professional editors or anything. They're just like people that you know, or it could be, people that you don't know too, but they're just normal people that like reading books. So you get like feedback from just like, an ordinary person that would read your book, to be fair, in the first place before, the editors come in.
Yeah. And I think that's great that you've done that, because that's something that I think, a lot of writers don't talk about often. I think I'm starting to hear it more. Like you mentioned YouTube, people are starting to say like, oh, I got a beta reader, or I got a plethora of beta readers. So I'm curious, how many beta readers did you get? Did you have a couple in mind? You had a goal?
I asked a lot of people, so I was just like, whoever wants to read it, whoever wants to see it. I think I had like 10 people in mind, but I think, how many people actually read it? Probably about 6 people actually read it, and I think 3 people actually like read the whole thing, which is fine. It's hard to get people to like read things.
It is, yeah.
And, so it's fine. And I can't even be mad because, like, I have a friend's manuscript that I keep telling myself I gotta finish. And I am gonna finish it. I'm totally gonna finish it. But, like, I can't be mad because I'm guilty of it too. But, I was like, no, I gotta finish it. But I'm going to. I totally would. But yeah, like, cause even then, cause any feedback is good. And even though, like, only, 3 people finished it, I think that was fine. Like it was still like they told me their thoughts if something was confusing, if something was not, and stuff like that. So it was good. And then the other people that read it that didn't finish it, I still got feedback from them on like the parts that they did read, and it was really helpful. It also kind of gives you feedback on what you need to work on, what people like, what you can like dove into or emphasize. Like I feel like every writer has their thing that they're really, really good at and stuff like that. Like some people, like their oh my gosh, their prose are just so poetic, and I'm so jealous. But if you know that and you get feedback for that, you can like dive into, like, you can like dwell on that and just make your book just sound so like just poetically beautiful.
Yeah. I love that you kind of brought this up. And you know what? Actually, you're saying something that I think I want to tackle as well. You're saying, you know, all feedback is good feedback. Feedback is good feedback. So tell me, like, what is your mentality with feedback? 'Cause I know some of us, we can get scared or, you know, we can, you know, yeah, exactly. Just be like, oh my gosh, you know, so what is your mentality about that?
Well, I mean, you have to take, so with feedback, especially with writing, I'm not going to lie. If someone doesn't like my book, I do get disappointed because you work so hard on it, but it's okay if they don't like it because most of the time they'll tell you why. And I think all feedback is good feedback because you have to keep in mind, one, not everyone's going to like your story because no one likes every story they've ever like read. You know, Dracula is a classic and I was upset at that book because I thought the ending was anticlimactic and I was still talking about that. And that's like a classic book, you know, and I was just like, even I was just like, it could have been better. But, so not everyone is going to like your story. So I think you have to have that mentality, but also because they'll tell you why they didn't like it, that's really good. Cause if it's something that you need to work on, that's good. So you can become a better writer, but also you have to keep in mind, maybe your book is also just not their cup of tea, you know, because everyone likes different genres and different tropes and different things. And if it's like they didn't like a trope that you like, that's fine. That feedback you don't necessarily have to listen to because like people like different tropes and maybe that person doesn't like that trope, but someone else will. And if you like it and it's just like, oh, I don't like enemies to lovers. Okay. That's fine. Other people do. So it's not something that you have to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so it's like, I feel like you have to take feedback on an individual basis. So you have to, I mean, it's great for like learning what you need to work on, what you're good at, but also just, it lets you know, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's great for that, but also I'm trying to say don't take it too much to heart in a sense, because if it's, just the person doesn't like that genre or that type of book, they're like, yeah, they're not going to like it as much as someone that does. So it's really good to pay attention, like what they're actually saying. So it's all good. So, you know,
yeah,
because you have to keep in mind the person, reading it. You know, one of my friends read my book and he read it out of support for me, and he's so I'm a feeler like person, probably not a surprise. And he is a thinker person who likes biographies, and he likes my book enough, but I wrote like a teen YA girly book. Yeah, it was
like,
and he liked that. No, you liked it enough because I think a good story is a good story. And because he liked the magic system and he thought it was like fun and adventurous. But, you know, he was just like, oh man, this girl has like a lot of emotions. And I was like, well, yes, dude, she's a teenager.
Why?
So I think you have to keep that in mind. And then likewise, like my friends that like YA books, they're like, oh man, this is great. This is how I was when I was a teenager. Oh my gosh, you know, I have a romantic subplot. And they're like, oh my gosh, that guy is so good. So you have to keep in mind what your audience is with feedback too, which is all I'm saying. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like you really hit the nail on the head with that because like a lot of people, they get like stuck at the feedback.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't take it. I can't hurt my baby, you know. But I think what you're saying is like, you know, all of it is going to help your book just be better, you know?
Yeah.
Totally. And you know, actually you said something earlier. You also said that I think when you gave it to beta readers, you gave it to people you trusted. And that's super important, you know, because you can't just give it to anybody. You know, some people will like actually try to rip you apart if you're not like totally careful.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Right? And you're like, that was the wrong person.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I remember it was a while ago. I took a creative writing class in college one time. And then that's happened to me before where I forget, I submitted some story and then, I mean, it was my fault too, because I think I was at that point, I was also a media major, so I was like doing a lot of stuff and not sleeping, and I did my assignment last minute. And so I wrote the story last minute, and then I told everyone, like, hey guys, can you, like, I wrote this last minute, there might be like some like mistakes in it, but they were like, in my class was like, yeah, no, we got you. They ripped me to shreds. It was so bad. Like, one person asked me, like, do you even know how to write? I was like, dang, dude. Like, yeah.
Oh, that's not necessary.
So I know, right? So I mean, but to be fair, I did write it last minute too. But I agree that there's some people that like toss your like feelings aside. But I mean, but it's also important not to do on the other end where you don't want to just give it to like a yes person. You want to give it to someone who will give you constructive criticism, but they're like just like not like a jerk about it. And someone who's happy to like disagree with you in a respectful way, because then you can actually get their honest feedback. So you want somewhere in the middle where someone will just, you know, they'll be honest, and that's what you want.
That's a good point. That's what you need. Honesty, like in like true honesty, not just like, oh, well, this character sucks, but like, you know what, this character didn't quite land for me, you know?
Yeah, and ask them like, why?
Yeah, why? Great.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is awesome. I love all of the energy that you're bringing, not just to the show, but I feel like it's probably reflected very much in your book. And I love it. First of all, whenever you want to come back for book 2, let us know. Would love to get to the show. But what can we expect from you next? You kind of talked about your trilogy, but what else can we see that's going to be happening in your future?
Well, I guess just me, well, I'm trying to get my book, currently in bookstores. So currently, for anyone who lives in the Northeast Ohio area, my book is actually at, the Fireside, bookstore in Sugar Falls, Ohio. Like physical copies are there. Thank you. And I'm currently trying to get the physical copies in more places. It is available everywhere where books are sold online, so like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, even the Target website, Google Play. Yeah, it's available everywhere books are sold online and internationally. So if you go on Amazon and you're in England, it will be there as well. So, but I'm trying to get it in like physical bookstores. So that's the other thing that that's what's next for me. I think I did an expo, a book expo earlier this year, so I'm going to try to do more of those next year too. You just have to sign up for those way in advance. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would say all of that stuff, just me trying to just do all that stuff. I am thinking, you can tell me what you think about this. I was thinking about maybe trying to do an event too, about like how to self-publish a book, because I've gotten a lot of questions about it. Like, what do you think? Should I do? I haven't decided if I should do that or not.
I love that. Yes. Okay, because literally I wrote down 2 notes for myself that I was like, okay, possible future guest topics to bring you back on is self-publishing, because it seems like you did it the right way, you know, because a lot of people, they kind of cut corners. It sounds like you did it the grand, amazing, perfect way. And the second one was like physical bookstores. People they want to know how to do that, you know? So yeah, 100%. I say yes. I say go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But yeah, that's what's next, is just me continuing to try and get it into, physical bookstores and stuff like that. So, but yeah, and of course, working on book 2, I have a goal of trying to actually finish like the first draft of book 2, just it being a continued story, by like December 31st of this year. Hopefully that happens, you know, if not then sometime in January. So that's the goal, because I do want to put book 2 out, you know, like, and it's so much fun. I can't wait for book 2. So many things happen in book 2, and the main character gets so much character growth, and it's a lot of fun. It is genuinely a lot of fun to write book 2, and and you get to learn more of like the magical world in book 2 as well, because book 1 is a little bit more of an introduction because the main character is like dropped into that world, but she's not from it. Like, she is from her world, which is, so she's telekinetic. And one thing I didn't say, like, so there is a bit of a magic versus technology thing going on in the book too. So the psychics have technology and the sorcerers have magic. So she grew up a little bit closer to us with technology, and then she's dropped into like this magical like thing. So she's just like, oh, okay. And then in book 2, like, you learn more about like the magical world and stuff too. So it's definitely fun to write. So I'm definitely gonna like try to buckle down and get that done so I can put that out as well.
Okay. I that's so cool, because I think typically, or a lot of the times, we see like it's the opposite. You know, you're kind of dropped into like the super fancy magical, and then it's like, oh, you are versus the technological, you know? So that's cool. I like that. It's a little bit different. That's cool. Awesome. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so I am, I believe, at Tiara J Brown, on Instagram. Yes. I also have a Facebook group. If you just Google like author Tiara J Brown, like, my Facebook group will come up. So I am in those places. I have a website called www.tiarajbrown as well. If you subscribe to my website, that's where I have a like monthly newsletter, and I keep everyone up to date with everything. So when I do announce the date for book 2, like when I know when it's coming out, obviously it will be announced in the newsletter. I'll announce it online too, but if you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll be able to find out first. And also the newsletter is also when I as I always do this, at least I did it for book 1, so I'm going to do it for book 2 too. Before the book comes out through the newsletter, I will release like the prologue or like a sneak peek of it, because I think that's fun. So if you subscribe, you get that too, like when that comes down the line, because I did it there. If you also just want to read a sneak peek of book 1, that is also on the website, since book 1 is out, like that's also there. But yeah, I am in all of those places, and yeah.
Okay. And also, are you, because you're going to try to meet your like end of year deadline, are you going to have all this participate like in NaNoWRIMO by chance, or is it going to just be separate?
No, I'm trying to finish this book. I can't. I can't. And then, and then book 2 is, just because of like, book 2 is a little bit more complicated than book 1. I can't even use book 2 as NaNoWRIMO, just because I want to take my time in like making sure it's like a really, really good story. Because like something that happens in storytelling sometimes is like, because book 2 is technically the middle, I want to make sure that book 2 is still like very, very interesting.
Right.
Which it should be. It definitely should be, because the main character is in a very not good situation at the beginning of book 2 and has to battle that. So I do want to take, this is one of the things I was just like, no, I want to take my time to make sure this is like even better than the first book, because as a writer, each book I want to be like even better. Like I heard someone say one time, I want my first book to be my worst book. Not that you want your first book to be bad, but you just want to keep like getting better as you go.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Tiara. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm glad. Good. I always love that. I want people to have fun, and just inspire each other. So thank you so much. We're looking forward to having you back on here again. And we're wishing you much of luck. And again, wherever books are sold, you will find Tiara J Brown. Best of luck for your next book. But congratulations again on the Tales of Alexandria Steckler, the Locket. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right, we'll wrap this up right here. Thank you again.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Good. Thank you.
Woo!
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the How to Write a Book podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to keep up with me and my work, check out the website blackheartedstudios.com. That's www.blackheartedstudios.com. And follow me on Instagram at Massiel Writes. That's at Massiel Writes. As a book coach and publisher, I'm passionate about helping aspiring authors bring their stories to life. So if you've been dreaming of writing a book and don't know where to start, head to my website and let's chat. You get a free 30 minutes on me. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks.